Bonjour and welcome to my Way of Thinking podcast, or my What for Short, hosted by me, Lee Greeno, here live from the Man Cave every week. Do you like my little t-shirt, lockdown t-shirt? I think I had this quite a while ago. Hopefully no lockdown no more, Boris. Now today I am speaking to the brilliant Emma Jane Taylor. Oh, this is just a heart-wrenching but very important interview with such a lovely woman. Emma's been through it. She's a keynote speaker now, talking about her ordeal with abuse and things like that. She's just an amazing woman and a great dancer as well. But I'm not going to tell you anymore. Listen to the interview because it is an eye-opener and this woman is amazing. Now, I think it's all about us, amazing human beings that have a story to tell, and those stories can vary massively. But with the guests I'll be interviewing, you'll always be able to take a little bit of advice or insight into how extraordinary we can all be. Remember, 4 rules: 1, no bullshitting; 2, no judging; 3, no negativity; and 4, have fun. Now, remember the podcast stream on the usual platforms. Just put Mama Thinking Podcast and we pop up everywhere. And finally, if you want to be a guest or you want to ask me a question or you think you know a good guest, email me. It's whatpodcast@aol.com. Okay, let's get on with it. This is an amazing interview with the brilliant Emma Jane Taylor. Okay, welcome to my Way of Thinking podcast. And today we have a very special guest on. It is the one and only Emma Jane Taylor. Woo! Welcome, Emma. You okay?
I'm good, thanks, Lee. Thank you so much for having me on your show today. I feel very privileged to be here.
Privileged? I haven't heard that before. Honoured? Oh, no. Thanks ever so much. Well, look, we've got loads to talk about today, but what I always do before we start is I'll always talk about a couple of stories, funny stories or uplifting stories because I read the news. I don't know if you read the news, and it's always pretty depressing, isn't it, at the minute? So I always like to just start with a couple of uplifting stories, shall we say. And you were just talking about animals. We're both animal lovers. And I read one this morning, which I thought was a really nice story. This basically, let me tell you, a horse who was heartbroken after she lost her baby has become a mum once more after adopting a malnourished foal. Sighty, the mare's foal, unfortunately arrived stillborn, leaving the expectant mother without a child to care for. So her owners decided to offer her as a foster mother, and she was matched with a male foal who had just lost his mum to colic and was in desperate need of a caretaker. It was put on TikTok, so it went viral, and they documented the moment that the little son was united with this, with this horse. And sometimes it doesn't work out, but they just took to it straight away. She accepted him immediately as if he was his own. And there's this big emotional TikTok video that's been viral, but it is lovely. And they just got together straight away as if it was a real foal. And I just thought it was a lovely little uplifting story. And if you do, I've got TikTok, it's worth watching. I love horses. I've never had one.
I've had 2 horses, but I think animals have feelings, and lots of people forget that. And animals can be severely mistreated. And when I look around my house here, I've got fluffy faces looking at me. I've got cats and I've got bunnies outside, and I've got my dog as well. They have feelings. I know they have feelings, and it's just very. I find it very warming having them in my family, and just when no one else is around me, I just have these fluffy little babies around, and they need me and I need them.
Yeah, we can learn a lot. I've said this before. We can learn a lot off animals. They just, if you're down, they know you're down. They'll come and try and help you over it, and they're just brilliant things. I do love animals, even the chickens.
Yes,
they are funny. Okay, so that was the first story, and then the second one, which was a bit more of a funny story. And I was just thinking at the minute, because of lockdown, obviously we're coming out of it now, but the takeaway service has just been crazy, hasn't it? I mean, I hate having takeaways, but you just do it because of the convenience, don't you? Have you been having many takeaways?
Well, Lee, I'm afraid one of those, crazy, stupid very healthy people who doesn't like takeaways. Probably the most naughtiest thing I have is an oat cake.
Yeah.
But no, actually, I lie. I do occasionally. I have a curry, very, very occasionally, and occasionally we've had a Thai meal, and it's been nice to be able to support our local community in that sense. But yeah, I know I do like going out, and it has been nice to enjoy takeaways, but I wonder how it's going to change when we come out of lockdown now.
Yeah, definitely. Well, anyway, the story was a pizza delivery driver left a woman in stitches by following a bizarre set of delivery instructions she left for him. Customers often use additional information options on food orders to tell the restaurant about allergies or how to find the address and things like this. But on this one, another TikTok video, a doorbell camera catches the moment the takeaway driver walks towards the front door, holding the pizza. And then the talk through, you've got one of these cameras that you can have that you can talk through. We've got one on the front for delivery drivers. And he was instructed to scream, "Shannon, your pizza's here." And they thought, yeah, and they didn't think it was going to happen, and he actually did that. He did shout it out, which is quite hilarious when you watch the video. And they just said the woman was left in stitches and just thanked the impeccable service at the hands of the delivery driver. And I just thought it was nice. These delivery drivers, I don't think they get paid much money. And, you know, it's quite a thankless task. So just big up to the delivery drivers.
And it's a good, and they took it to the right house, not like Amazon.
Well, yeah, true.
Oh, I'm not sure if I'm allowed to say that, but
no, so we want.
Gosh, so many things have gone missing through lockdown.
Yeah, well, we're ordering a lot more online, aren't we? So we're having a lot more delivered. But it's when they leave things in silly places, like in a bin. And you think, you know, if that parcel is worth a lot of money, someone could just walk across, pick the lid up and take the parcel. And you just think sometimes, but I know, and we've talked about this before on the podcast, they have to deliver as many parcels as they can.
Yes, and they're on a time limit. But we get every day 2 or 3 parcels not meant for us. And then we have to spend time working out who they are, where they have to go to. Right. And it's actually quite infuriating sometimes. Is it
because you've got have you got a funny address or something like that?
Yeah, just unusual address, I suppose. But yeah, it is frustrating. But we've also lost, we lost a sound bar.
Oh my God. And that's big, isn't it? It's like...
Yeah. I mean, you know, there's not many things that have gone missing, but apart from some big things like that, which has been a shame because it leaves you questioning where have they got lost, you know? Yeah.
Like I say, I was talking about one story where this lady was trying to do deliveries and her house was just full of them. And what she was expected to do for the actual price of what she was getting paid was pretty ridiculous. You're always going to get problems, aren't you, if you're pushing people like that? But that's where we are. So there was a couple of uplifting stories. Now, so Emma, I spotted you on Matchmaker, I think it was. Matchmaker FM. I think for people that don't know, Matchmaker FM is links you with guests and shows, so you can be a guest on a show, or you can find guests. And it's a great little website. I've been using it for a while now, and I don't get all my guests from there. I think there's other ways and networking and things like that. But you do have some brilliant stories on there. And when I saw yours, I just thought, wow, what a great story! What a journey! And on this podcast, we're all about people's journey from where they've been. A lot of the time, facing adversity and real shit is just the easiest way to put it, and coming out the other side. And yours, I just thought was unbelievable. But first of all, I always ask people about growing up, and obviously it started when you were younger, but whereabouts, tell us a little bit about growing up sort of when you were younger and household, and was it a normal family environment?
Yeah, do you know what, Lee? I've shared my story around the world, and that's the first time anyone's actually asked me that question, which is a really good question to ask because, you know, it shows all sorts of things for me, but actually, so you know, I grew up in Buckinghamshire.
Right. Okay.
I had my first memories were around 2 or 3 years old, and I lived with my mum and my stepdad, my two brothers, and from time to time my step siblings would visit, and we had a cat called Honey. So it seemed normal. I would go and visit my father, my biological father, every other weekend, and it seemed like a really happy place. I knew no different. I was not aware, I guess, that the situation wasn't normal, because it was my normal, right? I mean, I lived with my mum and stepdad. We had a nice family around us, and like I say, I used to see my biological father every couple of weeks. So it was a happy place. I just remember being happy. You know, my dad would pick me up. We'd go down to Percy Lovejoy's sweet shop in Marlow, Buckinghamshire. We'd get a quarter pound of wine gums. We'd go home. We'd watch the Generation Game.
Hey.
We'd go through the conveyor belt. Yeah. We'd go down the conveyor belt and the cuddly toy, and we just had fun. We'd go swimming. We would just had a fun time. So, in answer to your question, from 2 years till sort of like maybe 10 years old, I was just enjoying my little life.
Yeah, it's funny, when we're children, we adapt to the environment we're in, don't we? So,
yes,
like you
it's
said,
our normal.
Yeah, we were a single parent family, but our mum loved us. She gave us a good environment. We didn't have much, but we were very happy. So I think kids are quite resilient in that way. And I think it's interesting to just hear that, you know, sometimes we do adapt and we do get on with things, even though we haven't got much. The main thing is we've got parents that love us. I know you said you got a stepdad, you know, and I visited my dad now and again. But he's still, you know, even though he wasn't there, he loved us. And you just work it out, don't you, as kids? You're quite resilient, don't you think?
Totally. And like I said, when I didn't know that I didn't know about resilience or perseverance, really, because I just enjoyed all sides of my family. You know, I grew up with my mum and stepdad, and every other weekend was to see my dad. It was just normal. I mean, there was just nothing different for me. It was only later on in life, I think, when you look back and you realize, you know, your differences between some of your lives and family lives, but it didn't matter. I was happy.
Yeah. So when you had a first encounter with abuse, was it, how old were you? 9, 10, wasn't it?
9, 10 years old.
So tell us a little bit about that.
We'd gone on holiday with the family to Greece. We had enjoyed, you know, almost 2 weeks there. And, you know, we regularly went to a taverna opposite where our hotel was. And it was a really nice place, because that's where we'd met other families. And I'd made a couple of girlfriends, and my brothers had made friends. So, you know, it was a really nice environment around us. So on this particular night, I'd gone with my mum and my dad. I only remember my mum and when I say my dad, my stepdad, and this other little girl who I got friends with. We used to go pedaling together. And then every time we'd been there, the owners of the restaurant used to take all the children away from the parents. I don't know what time it was, but it was, you know, sometime after the meal. And we go and see the animals outside, the donkeys, goats, you know, sheep, horses, and I'm an animal lover, as we've already discussed. So I'd loved it. And so we went out there and we did that quite a few times. And then on this one night, we'd gone out there, and the restaurant owner took us out to the animals, and his brother was there. And for some reason, this one brother pulled me slightly away from the others and out of the light, because the light was coming in from the taverna still. And we weren't that far away, actually, to be honest. You could hear the laughter and the plate throwing and the screaming and the music. So, you know, you felt safe. And then he pulled me slightly away. And when I say slightly away, I'm talking inches away from the others, but just enough into the shadows. Yeah. And that was the first time I was sexually assaulted as such. But again, I didn't know what had happened to me. You know, when you're that young, you don't, you know, I had no idea of what sexual abuse or assault was. So I ran back into the restaurant and felt, I guess I can only describe it as awkward. I never said anything. That was it. That happened, and that was it. I never said anything. But I think I noticed sort of over the next couple of years that I was maybe a little bit more intent on making sure I was clean.
Yeah. It's when we're young, something like that, I suppose you just take it on board and you just get on with it. You didn't say anything. It's worrying, isn't it? That you think that, has this happened to other children? No doubt.
Oh, I'm sure.
No
Thousands,
doubt.
millions.
Yeah. And it's just never come to light, which is pretty sickening. I would like to think in today's age it's better. You know, I don't know whether it is. I would like to think it is, but yeah, it is pretty sickening. So tell us. So obviously, then led on. So you got over this, but you wanted to clean yourself. So
I mean, I just think, you know, it certainly triggered, and of course, any kind of assault or abuse can cause a memory blockage anyway. And so the next thing I remember, the most significant, because I guess I wasn't so happy after 9-10 years old. And I don't remember much until going to see my father one weekend, and he picked me up, and just me and my brothers were at the house, and I looked back and they were stood at the window crying, and I'm thinking, why aren't they coming and why are they upset? But you don't say anything.
Yeah.
I guess there was some undercurrents going on, but really wasn't aware. I was too young. I was 11, 12, I think. And I went over to his house for the weekend. And then on the way to my riding lesson, which he took me to every other weekend, he pulled up in a lay-by. And he said, look, you know, the next weekend to see your mum, to see me is Mother's Day, and your mum would like you to be at her house. What would you like to do? And I said, well, Daddy, I'd like to see Mummy on Mother's Day, obviously, but I want to see you. And he said, well, we need to talk about this because I don't know if I can see you again. And of course, that was so definitive and you know, final, but I didn't understand that. I didn't understand that. I was just a kid. I had no real understanding of how relationships and emotions and how people were. So I went off to riding. I had butterflies. I remember having butterflies. Came back, spent the night there, and then the next day he took me home, and I remember clearly my two half brothers playing with their friends in the garden. They would have been very young, and we had this sort of grand, you know, goodbye from me.
Yeah.
And of course, now when I look back, of course, I guess they knew that was the last time they'd see me. So, you know, he called me that night. He said, look, I'll call you tonight. Let's discuss it tonight. Have another think about it. So I went home, and I remember him calling me. I was at my mum's home. And he said, have you thought any more about this next weekend? Now, I was aware that there were rumblings going on in the family, but again, I wasn't sure what they meant. And I said, yeah, Daddy, I want to stay with Mummy on Mother's Day, but can I still see you the weekend after? And he said, well, look, you've made your decision. I can't see you again.
God, yeah.
And that was that. I'm 49 this year. I've not seen him since. And to say that he broke me in half is an understatement. I shattered, I mean, just completely broke. I mean, that all those happy years just seemed to pale into insignificance, because I was just suddenly gone from quite happy to very dark, very isolated and sad and miserable and mysterious. And I ran out of the house after that phone call with my mum and stepfather behind me. They literally wrestled me to the ground. And I was shaking like a leaf, and I started vomiting. And then actually that got worse as time went on, because the realization that I would never see my dad, you know, he was my prince, he was my hero, and I was never going to see him again. And I couldn't work it out that he wouldn't send me birthday cards or Christmas cards, or I wouldn't have a hug or a cuddle again. And it was just a very difficult time to navigate. And back in that day, and my day, your day as well, I think, Lee, we didn't have this communication like we have now. We don't have the openness and the conversation that we have now. So whilst I had people around me that loved me, they didn't know how to communicate with me, and they didn't know how to navigate me through. So I ended up going from nice child down a slippery slope.
Oh, nightmare. Did you ever find out, was there an undercurrent or what actually happened? You didn't, no idea?
Never found out why he did that. I think there was always some questions around where he was now in his new life, but there was no answers. But just lots of unanswered questions our end, I think, because you know, lots of children lost their father, and it wasn't just me, but lots of questions unanswered, and I don't think we'll ever find those out.
I suppose the difficulty is especially when you're a child, is you've got anger, you've got guilt, you've got all these emotions, haven't you? And it's you're trying to process them. When you're a kid, you've got no chance, have you?
No, and also our brains haven't developed, right? You know, our brains don't develop until at least 19 to 25. So you're processing really grown-up stuff as a kid without having fully developed your brain. And now my brain, I mean, so I feel sometimes like I haven't fully developed some of my emotional state because of what has happened with, you know, the trauma that I experienced as a child. So, you know, my delayed onset of growth took, you know, was a lot longer than some others. Yeah.
And I suppose, do you still look back and think, you know, I'd like to find him, or I'd like to change things, or is it something that you've dealt with and you've processed now and you've put it to sleep? I suppose you never fully put it to sleep.
I think there have been occasions. I mean, I bumped into him in the high street once when I was in my late teens, early 20s, and we just got kind of brushed shoulders. And I was with a colleague, and my colleague said, "Are you okay?" And I said, "Actually, I think we've just walked past my father." He said, "Do you want to go and speak to him?" And I said, "Well, no, he doesn't want to speak to me." And so I turned around and he was looking at us. And so my friend said, "He's looking at us." I said, "Well, just keep walking." And I was shaking again. And I felt sick again, because it was just weird. I mean, it was just weird. And then I was sat in a cinema once, and he was in front of me in a cinema with his wife. And that was really weird.
But I suppose...
there have been, sorry, Lee, there have been a few occasions where we bumped into each other, and there's been, I guess, an attempt to try and salvage a relationship. But there's so much complication and questions. I think it was very difficult to move forward with this relationship when he wasn't able to give me any knowledge or understanding of why.
Yeah, part of my family sort of disowned us for one reason or another. My dad was a bad egg, and you always think, you know, should I get hold of him? Should I get in contact with him? But then I also think, fuck them. I've got a beautiful family. If they don't want to know me, that's their downfall. I'm here. I'm open. You know, I don't hold grudges, but I'm not going to search out people that just can't be asked, or not can't be asked, but ultimately, come on, we're all human beings. We can all connect. If you can't be asked to connect with me, then I've got my family. I'm happy in who I am. And like you say, you almost have to just think, well, I'm just going to let it go. It's you know, it's their burden to bear. It is frustrating. I do, you know, I do understand on some levels.
Yes. Yeah. And, you know, I think I've also understood the power of forgiveness, and
definitely.
I won't forget. And I don't, because I think what I've learned is that you just don't treat people the way that I was treated. So I live in a space of kindness and love now. And I take that into my world, my work, my everything, because I understand how damaging it can be when you don't treat people with kindness and love.
Definitely. And the power of forgiveness, that's an interesting one, because I've worked with a few people, and one of my podcasts with a guy called James, he had an horrendous time and was abused, and ultimately he forgave his abuser. And I think that was important for him to move forward, you know, because otherwise they have all the control, and he forgave the abuser for himself, really. But anyway, so moving on, because obviously this is quite deep, isn't it?
Yes.
So things don't get any better from there. Tell us a little bit about, so it was when you were teenage years, so you were in a bad place anyway, I suppose. Tell us a little bit about getting into your teenage years.
Yeah, so I was in a bad place, Lee, and I just started senior school. Ironically, the senior coach school that my parents had chosen for me was closer to my father's house. So I was already in a dark place because, you know, I was right around the corner from his house. I couldn't see him. I didn't know. Yeah. And so I just went from complex to complex to complex to dark to dark to dark. Yeah. And I was really lonely. I was, I guess, nervous and had this bit of a disposition. I was become very shaky and sick. Hadn't got any confidence, was really fearful of saying the wrong thing because I didn't want to lose any more people in my life. So I just kept the status quo. I didn't say anything and kind of lived my life like that. Didn't feel like anyone really understood. And it wasn't because I wasn't loved. I just don't think I was understood. And, you know, there was a lot of children around the family, my family, and there was a lot of complex situations going on. And then out of nowhere, a friend of the family or an acquaintance to the family decided to rock up in our lives and became my friend. And it was almost like, wow, I have a friend. And I have someone who can listen to me. I have someone who hears what I say. And I have someone who understands me. And it was really here that I started to feel more confidence. You know, I had a friend. Yeah. So he showered me with gifts. He gave me money. He made me feel safe. He was kind. My life felt brighter. Yeah. I started to feel more wanted, confident, cared for, and needed. He made me feel really good. He was there for me like no one else was. But of course, there was a heavy price to pay for this, and I hadn't realised that when I'd entered this friendship. After I'd gone off the rails at school, I was so insecure and vulnerable. It was just nice to have my friend around. But, you know, he came at a high price. He raped me, degraded me, tortured me, scared me, and left me even more tattered and down than I already was. And I suddenly felt unsure, but because he was so nice, I felt comfortable and confident. So I was in a really complex place. I was in a really messed up place with this relationship. So I couldn't maneuver it. And because I didn't have that open communication with people around me, and like I say, it's not because they didn't love me. They thought that I was now going off the rails again because of what had happened to my father, which I was, but of course it was now much deeper than that. I was being groomed and being sexually abused by this so-called friend of our family. So it became just a very complex place. I didn't know what to do. I was crying all the time. My sickness got worse. My shaking got worse. My schooling suffered. I didn't have many friends. Well, but actually, interestingly, I've spoken to some of my school friends recently, and that's been an eye-opening conversation because they now say, we recognise all of this, and we're now feeling bad that we didn't do anything because we remember you shaking and feeling sick. We just thought it was you. But, you know, being groomed as a child removes your self-esteem, your self-worth, your faith, and it leaves you in a really fragile and empty shell. So that was the next part of my life, and that started from, I'd say, around 13, and that kind of went on until maybe I was around 15, 16 when I found the strength to step away. But when I left school at 16, because I'd failed so much at school, I literally left with a PE GCSE under my belt and a juvenile delinquent label slapped on me by my psychiatrist, which I'd been sent to by the school. That was it.
Yeah.
But I didn't care, Lee. You know, I
Yeah.
didn't care about anyone or anything at that time. I felt like the system had failed me. People had failed me. I was in this dark place. I felt removed from society. And like I say, in this fragile and empty shell full of low self-esteem. And no one knew what to do with me. So I just became the child that drank, took drugs, and all the other things that
Wanted
we
to
weren't supposed to do.
self-destruct.
Because you wanted to self-destruct, you know, and then my symptoms from there were OCD, bulimia, night terrors. I was paranoid, and the list went on and
Jesus.
on and on and on.
So what do you think was the turning point? Because, you know, it's horrendous. But what was the turning point? Was it someone's help? Was it you? What do you think it was?
I had two light bulb moments. When I was around 19, I literally drank and taken drugs through my life to this point. Everyone around me expected me to either be dead or in prison by the time I got to 20. And I guess I just didn't care. I thought that probably would come true, but you just don't care. And so I got to 19, I hated everybody, didn't like my family, I had a few friends now because I'd stepped away from my abuser. And then my stepfather, who had brought me up from the age, well, I remember from the age of 2, was rushed into hospital with suspected heart failure. And I guess we thought we'd lose him. And up until this point, I hated him. I still missed my father. I was drained from being abused over the years, and I was ready to take my own life. Yeah. And then what happened next just changed my whole world, really. I saw my stepfather lying in bed, hooked up to machines, wires, and goodness knows what else. Yeah. And my heart just stopped. Yeah. There was this man, the only man who's loved me, looked after me, cared for me, listened to me. He's been hurt by me. But here he is, the man I never really recognized, the one who had consistently tried to be my friend, was now about to die. And it massively impacted me. I mean, I can't tell you how much it impacted me. And then the second light bulb moment was when I was working in a pub, and one of the regulars came in and said, so EJ, what are you going to do with your life? I said, I want to be a dancer. And he started laughing. He said, you're never going to be a dancer. I said, why? He said, well, you're just always drunk and taking drugs, and you're not going to be a dancer. Because I said I wanted my own business as well. I said, why are you laughing at me? He said, because you're just never going to get there. And I was like, oh my God, I've got my headmistress telling me I was a failure. I've got my local punter telling me you're never going to get there. And I just stopped. Oh my goodness, right there. And then it hit me between the eyes. And this was not the legacy. This wasn't what I wanted to leave, the drunk stumbling through the streets, heading towards a life of crime or other. And it engaged a bit of light. And I took off to Spain when I was 19. Drank myself around Spain. came back and went into therapy when I was 23, stopped drinking, stopped taking drugs. I thought, that's it. I need to do this. I need to make a change and see the world differently, because there are some good people out there and I'm not the failure. So I changed my life. I found talking in therapy very therapeutic, very emotionally enlightening, actually, albeit very difficult at times.
Yeah, God, yeah.
And without alcohol, nicotine, and all the other substances I found I started to sleep much better. I still slept with the light on. In fact, I'm 49 this year, and I've only just started sleeping with the light off. I'm not proud. I'm proud to say that. I'm not ashamed of that. But I started feeling better. You know, I began to listen to my body, to my mind, to my emotions, and I went into business. Started my first business in 2000, celebrating 21 years this year, and my therapy deepened. I have enjoyed an A to Z of therapy over my years. I've done everything imaginable, from holistic therapy, psychotherapy, hypnotherapy, Reiki.
Everything.
And I really understood the power of me, and actually that I had done nothing wrong.
Yeah. It's interesting what you say about therapy, you know. So you're a big advocate for therapy then. And because you've done all these different types, would you say to someone it's finding the thing that's right for you? Or how would you explain it if someone turns around to you and says, oh, therapy is a waste of time? How did it work for
So
you?
when I first went into therapy, I thought, I'd just do 8 weeks, 12 weeks tops, and then that'll be it. And it was just talking therapy. And after 12 weeks, I'm like, that was okay, actually, but I think I need to do something different. So what I have done is found different therapies help me at different times.
Right.
And what I would advise to anybody is, don't just think it's an 8-week course, that's it. Because it ain't that easy.
Yeah.
And I don't know what your listeners' problems are. Everyone's problems are relative. We've all got our own difficulties. Everybody has their own difficulties. How you overcome them is how you choose to overcome them is down to you. I didn't want to live like this anymore. I didn't want to be mean and nasty to nice people. I didn't want to live a life taking and drinking all the wrong substances. It just wasn't me. So I understood it wasn't me, but I had a lot of work to understand who I was and what my values were and what I represented. And, you know, I'm not ashamed to say I was in and out of therapy for a good chunk of 15 to 20 years, but there's no stigma attached to that, because while I was going through my therapy, I built up my business, I built up my clients, I built up my team. So while I'm building my team and building my business, I'm also building my own sanity. And it worked parallel. It all worked together.
Yeah.
And no one knew I was in therapy. No one needed to. But I've only started talking about that in the last couple of years. But it doesn't matter. What matters is, what do you want to achieve? How do you want to get there? And what do you want to do when you get there?
Yeah.
And for me, I wanted to feel like the girl I was before the trauma started. I wanted to remind myself that I was still that child.
Yeah.
So I had to do a lot of inner work as well. So, it's also sorry, Lee. It just don't think hypnotherapy is the right thing for you because your friend did it and she feels brilliant. Go and experience lots of different things.
Yeah, that is a good point. I spoke to someone, Amelia. She was on the podcast, and she'd suffered quite a lot with bipolar, really bad. And she said, try a therapist, but it doesn't mean it has to be that therapist. If it doesn't work, try another one. It's working out what suits you, which is exactly what you just said.
Yes. And that's really important. And don't be embarrassed by it. And actually, guys as well, if you've got guys listening to this, I tell you what, I love a guy who says, I've gone into therapy. I just want to give them a hug, because I know how hard it is for men to go into therapy. And, you know, the work that I'm doing now is very much in promoting men and therapy, because it's really important. And I think everybody suffers. I think men suffer a little bit more than anyone knows.
I think with men, they just don't talk as much. I know it's Mental Health Week this week, but I did a set of 3 podcasts with specialists, and they all said the same thing, that men, they really do struggle to, you know, talk about their emotions, which is really sad, because I think this day and age, if you want to see a therapist, do whatever you need to get your life back to normal. There's nothing worse than having things swirling around in your mind and getting no clarity. It's crazy. But I think what I would say is, isn't it amazing how you've done this? You've virtually done it on your own. You've got your head together and said, I'm going to do this, I'm going to do this, I'm going to change things. And you've worked through it. It's almost like you've had a plan. And it's interesting that you said you did therapy while you were doing your business, because I've always found for myself, when times are hard, is having a goal or a plan. You know, I do filmmaking, not because I make any money out of it, but because it keeps me active and busy. And I think that's important, especially when you're really struggling.
Yeah, and I didn't know that at the time, but I'm a dancer by trade. So, you know, I'm very jazz hands, and that was where my career started. And, you know, that was one thing that helped my mind, I think, through all the difficulties, but I didn't realize that. So I don't get to dance, too old really to be a professional dancer these days, but I invest that into my businesses and all the work that I do around it. But that creativity that I have, and that need to constantly create, constantly be out there, is all part of this journey. And if you have gone through any troubles, creativity is really important. Knitting, drawing, flower arranging, gardening, you know, arranging your house in different ways, you know, feng shui and all of this. And it's just being creative allows you that freedom to be able to undo things. You know, I go to the gym and I swim every day, and I just love that release. It releases any negativity and allows me to feel good from all the good pheromones inside of you.
Yeah. And I mean, any way of switching off, it's almost like mindfulness, isn't it? It has, you know, we talk about exercise, and exercise is brilliant, but I know not everyone can exercise. But like you say, it can be anything creative. It can be painting, drawing, gardening.
Yes.
You know, I built this man cave when I was struggling at times. Anything that just keeps your mind towards something. The worst thing I think you can do is just ponder, just sit there and ponder on.
Oh, that's the worst thing. Anytime you want to ponder, go and put some earphones in and go for a nice long walk, because, you know, pondering is not going to help you.
No.
It can help you be creative, but like you say, not everybody can get to the gym or go swimming. There's lots of other ways to be creative. But I know how important it was for me in my career, in my recovery, in my success, and I don't mean monetary. It really allowed me the freedom to be here chatting to you, Lee.
Yeah, definitely. How long did it take, would you say, until you was comfortable in your own skin? So you're going into this therapy, it takes time. I know you have a family and you start talking about it. How long or do you think it's just an ongoing process? Or was there a time where you were like, actually, I think I'm in a happy place?
One of the things that I have shared before is, once you've been sexually abused, your life changes forever. And you don't live the normal life that others talk about, because you will never know what that means. So you create your own normal. And while you're creating your own normal, you're having to listen and hear what other people are going through. And you know that you're never going to match that. And so when you've kind of allowed yourself to go, I am just who I am, warts and all. And actually, I've forgiven my perpetrators. I've forgiven my father. I have forgiven anyone who's hurt me. And I've also forgiven myself for hurting other people. It hasn't meant that I've forgotten what happened. It's meant that I can take this forward and use this as fuel for me, because what we need to do is go, this is who we are. If I'm honest, I don't think I really stepped into that until 5 years ago. And, you know, when you think that's probably a good part of 40 years, really, of having to get to this place where I feel authentic and I feel that I can speak up, I can say things, I can do things. And if anyone has a problem with it, then I'm sorry, I can't help you. I just know that I am doing what it feels right for me now, from what I've learned in my life. And so to your listeners now, do what feels right for you, not for other people, because all of our lives are very different. They're all relative. We've all gone through different experiences, and we can never try and be someone we're not. We can only ever be ourselves, and we can only ever do that by authenticity and understanding what difficulties we've had to go through to be where we are right now.
Yeah. So tell us a bit about the book. Don't hold back. This is where you wrote the book. I don't know when you did, and I've seen you were in the sun and everything. I love a quote that I read: too positive to be doubtful, too optimistic to be fearful, and too determined to be defeated. Love that quote. Tell us a little bit about the book. When did that? Because I bet that was therapy in itself, wasn't it?
Yeah, so, you know, through my career, I then had a lot of opportunities to work in media and other activities. And it was here that I discovered I had imposter syndrome, because lots of people saw me as a very successful woman in business and so on and so forth. But it was none of that was important to me. It was being authentic. And I didn't feel like I was being authentic because no one knew who I was.
Yeah.
And they just saw they saw the version of you that you put out, which people do put out, right? And I thought, no, I want people to know me. And I decided to write my story, and I wrote it, cried, deleted, wrote it, cried, deleted, wrote it, cried, deleted for quite a few years. And then one day I thought, you know what, this is it. 2017, I put pen to paper. A friend of mine is a very well-known author, and I spoke to him and I said, I'm just about to put my book together and share my story. And I shared with him what I'd written about my story. And the book is a motivational toolbook to help anyone through difficulties. But of course, to give any credibility, you've got to put your story out there. Otherwise, people just don't buy into you. Yeah. That was the hardest thing for me. So, but I knew I had to be authentic. But I was writing, hi, I'm Emma Jane Taylor. I've gone through some difficult times in my life, and here's my book. Yeah. And he was like, yeah, that's just not going to cut any ice, EJ. You know, you have got to put more in there. So I put, my name's Emma Jane Taylor. I was abused as a child. My father left me. And through all these difficulties, I've understood how I can be who I am today. Yeah. And he was like, that's just not going to cut any mustard either. You have to go deep here. Yeah. People want to hear that stuff that only you know. And so I did, and I got it all out, and it was scary. It was therapeutic. It was liberating. Yeah. So my story went out, the book went out. That was in 2018. I've been very fortunate since that my work has been seen, you know, all over the world, on media platforms. And people got behind it. But I'm not unusual, right? There's a lot of me out there writing books like this. There's a lot of me writing stories like this, but there's not enough of me. There needs to be more of us. And actually, what is then the purpose of doing this? So I put the book out and I thought, that's it, done one book. I'm satisfied, life changed. And, but it's since changed again, because obviously the national press started picking up on my story, and it's not necessarily my story as such, it's how that I've overcome adversity and use that to be a successful businesswoman. And again, I don't mean monetary here, you know, to have achieved what I've achieved through all those years of therapy. But we can all do that. That is really the most important thing, is we can all do that. We just have to understand how we can be tenacious, dynamic, diverse through our own difficulties, and using our difficulties to create the true, authentic person we are today. Yeah.
Tell me a little bit about the online presence that you've got with the breaking the silence and things like that. Because I suppose, where are you with helping others, or I suppose you hope your story will help others? Because if one person reads it who's been abused and speaks up, or it helps, that's your job done. But tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, so I always said with my book, if I can just help one person, then it will have all been worth it. And you're absolutely right. But since then, it's helped a lot of people across the world, not just here in the UK. A lot of women have contacted me from Southeast Asia, Americas. In fact, I've done a lot of work in Australia and New Zealand as well. So my story has been read, like I say, all over the world. I have a lot of connections globally with men and women on the work that they're doing, the work that I'm doing. And breaking the silence really came at the end of 2020 during lockdown. I was doing a lot of stuff. My business is very busy, and it was a good time for me to streamline and go, right, what do I need to focus on? What don't I need to focus on? So I obviously have the business end has to be dealt with. And then I just changed around a few things and created Breaking the Silence. So Breaking the Silence is a platform for people to come together and share their voice. It's a safe space online in Facebook. And it was started with like 10 people. I think we've got like 250 people now. And I'll only let in people who either answer the questions correctly, or they are linked to someone I know or we know in the group, because these spaces need to be safe.
Yeah.
And I don't allow marketing, advertising, selling, or anything. It's just pure conversation, checking in and understanding people. We've also got a website that we put blogs and poetry on, and it's just become something that was small getting bigger and bigger. But obviously with getting bigger and bigger, I have to manage that as well with everything that I'm doing. So it's understanding what the focus is with that, and how that focus can continue being what I need to do to pay forward, and keeping a good sane balance on it, because I don't want these things to go out of control and become money. It's not about money. I don't want to monetize it at all. It's just about giving people a safe space. And so it's grown from there. And then at the end of 2020, when my story was picked up by the national press, I had a lady contact me, ask if I would write another book. She contacted my PA and said, would EJ write another book?
Wow.
Because she's got a story I think could really help people, next generations. I said, forget it, I'm not writing another book. But here I am. I am thick into a second book. And it's the focus is how can we reduce child sex offences? So I'm speaking to survivors. I've interviewed sex offenders. I've interviewed the governors at some of the most prolific sex offender prisons in the UK. Wow. I've interviewed sex offender support groups, whistleblowers, authorities, and the list goes on. So what I'm doing is going to say, look, this is a major problem, right? We need to do some work. So I work with a PR and a branding company who are working with me on a big project, which will launch probably in the next year. And that is really focused on what isn't being done and what we need to be doing to help reduce sex offences. And you know what, Lee? I go to bed every night and I know what my vision and mission is, but my personal vision and mission is for children to sleep peacefully at night without any dark trauma in their heads.
Too right, to be safe. Every child should be safe, without a doubt. And it's frustrating, but when you've got amazing people like you, it makes a difference, makes a big difference, I don't know how you find time to sleep, honestly.
I don't. Well, and then I found out that Roger Federer sleeps 12 hours a day, and I'm like, what am I doing with my life?
Crazy shit.
And I'm like, okay, so I really upped the ante on my sleep this year, because I'm like, he's a world champion. If I need to match him in any way, I need to up the ante on the sleep.
He's lazy. I think Arnold Schwarzenegger has about six hours, didn't he, or something like that. Right. But writing a book, I started writing a book. It's like climbing a mountain. You don't want to do it and you put it off and off. But when you do, the feeling is, and it sounds like this second book is just, whoa, what a challenge. And you're like, I don't know if I can do this. And once you're stuck into it, you're loving it, aren't you? You're just absolutely.
I'm like a dog with a bone. And you know what, Lee? I have to hear. So a friend of mine, Chip Baker, he is he's a guy in America, a really good friend of mine. He's a motivational coach. He says to me, EJ, you got to be comfortable having uncomfortable conversations.
Yeah.
And I'm thinking, he's absolutely right. Yeah. So when I'm listening to stories about the 6-week-old baby who had every bone broken in her body because she was sexually abused by someone, and the 2-year-old who died because she was so badly damaged by the man who sexually raped her. I know I have these conversations and they're not comfortable, but they're also, I know this sounds awful, I've got used to it because it's my world.
You've got the strength, You've got the strength.
And when people say, I don't want to hear, I'm like, you have to hear, right? Because if you don't hear, there's going to be more 6-week-old babies, more 2-year-olds dying. There is going to be more abuse. So the work that I'm doing is tough. That's why I go to the gym and swim every morning and go for a nice long walk at the end of the night, because I need that. And I don't have any technology on at the weekends. I need to be what I was when we remember no technology back in the day, just living a peaceful life. But it's important, and I'm not going to rest. This is it. I'm where I need to be, Lee. I'm now laterally thinking and laterally working to ensure that the work that I've done is the legacy. When I go back to the guy in the pub, Chris, he said, EJ, you're never going to amount to anything. And I was like, that wasn't my legacy. This is my legacy.
Yeah.
And he and I know him, and I occasionally say to him, you know, you spurred me on. And he's like, did I? I don't even remember that conversation. But, you know, it's him that spurred me on. I found my legacy, and I won't rest until I feel that I've had peace. And I'm also pleased to be able to tell you that my stepfather survived. He's now 84 and continues to be my best friend.
Oh, bless him. 84.
And my biggest supporter.
Yeah. Things have a way of working out, don't they? As horrendous as they are. And, you know, you put everything that you've been through, you're turning it into such a massive positive. It's just phenomenal. I always ask my guests for a bit of advice. So obviously it's Mental Health Week, and just what would your advice be maybe to someone who's struggling with mental health or is trying to get over some kind of trauma? Maybe some advice you've been given, I don't know.
I think talking is really important, and I think it's underestimated and still is. And I think there's been a lot of work trying to reduce the stigma of mental health.
Yeah.
And in many ways, that was a great deal of work that was being done, and certainly by the princes as well. Prince William and Prince Harry did that before lockdown, and people still are, but lockdown's really changed a lot of things. Yeah. So I think talking, remembering you've done nothing wrong, remembering you're worth it, and you do make a difference, really is something that I know I take forward with me. And remember your value. You know, what is your mission? What's your mission, Lee? What is your listener's mission? Your not your business mission, your personal mission. And you might not have even thought of this yet, right? But, you know, what is your personal mission in your life? And then start working backwards.
Yeah.
My direct messages are always open, actually. I speak to a lot of people all day, and I always find time for everybody.
Yeah, it's great advice. A lot to think about. And the thing is, with advice, you only need to say a few lines. A lot of the time, people know what they should be doing. It's getting the advice and listening to someone tell them. And I always ask my guests for a favourite. So you're into your performing arts. You run performing arts schools. Tell us, have you got a favourite film or a song or music or something that's maybe helped you through the years? I
have two.
Okay.
Dirty Dancing, Patrick Swayze. God. Sorry. I love him and I love that film. I've watched it so many times, I actually know the script. And I love
Patrick Swayze.
I always loved Top Gun as well. And they were two movies that I really enjoyed. But the other things that I used to enjoy watching, Blackadder.
Yeah.
I just used to put that on in the telly when I was younger, and I just used to fall asleep to it. I don't know why. Yeah. Every musical out there, every musical was good for me. And I used to listen to a song Cliff Richard did when I was younger, growing up.
Cliff Richard?
Yeah. He sung a song called Daddy's Home.
Yeah.
And I used to wish that my daddy would come home.
Oh, right, okay.
And I listened to that every night. Go and listen to it, Lee. It's heartbreaking just even hearing the song. And now I can listen to it because I made myself listen to it actually recently because I know it's a trigger for me.
Yeah.
And as I listened to it, I smiled with tears thinking, I'm okay. I've done this. And it doesn't matter what film, what music, whatever. It's all really important now just to accept me for me.
Yeah.
And do what I feel is right.
I think that's interesting what you say there about triggers because, you know, a lot of people have triggers and I've had them in the past. Like you say, when you can eventually listen to something or watch something and it doesn't you can get through it and you actually come out the other side and you think, I can cope now. It's quite I don't know, it makes you feel quite good inside, doesn't it, that you've got somewhere.
Yes. Yes, but I don't advise anyone to do that unless they're in the right state. I couldn't do it until
You've got to be
2 years ago.
You've got to be
40 years later.
You've got to be in the right place. So if people want to get in touch, find the book and things like that, Emma, where would they go?
If you go to my website, you'll find everything you need to know on me. That's emmajanetaylor.com.
emmajanetaylor.com. You're on Instagram, aren't you?
Oh, the Inspirational Mentor.
Inspirational Mentor.
And I'm the Inspirational Mentor on LinkedIn and EJ the Mentor on Twitter. But all the links to my social media are on my website. And you'll be able to find everything you need to know on me there.
Excellent stuff. Well, I'll definitely be getting hold of the book. Because I've got a part. I ask everyone for favourites. Sometimes they give me books, and I've just got a list like this.
I bet you have.
I am going through them. I am.
Well, good luck to you.
Oh, I love them. But look, you're an absolute inspiration. You're so open and honest. It's lovely that you've came on. You've gave your time to talk about something that's difficult, but it's important. It's definitely so important, isn't it?
So important. And thank you very much for having me on to talk about this and share the work that I'm doing as well. And I hope that it encourages other people to remember their own worth. Definitely.
Well, look, when you get your next book finished, make sure you come back on.
Definitely.
Tell us all about it, because I'd love to hear about it. It sounds challenging, but an amazing project.
Thank you.
All right, well, look after yourself, Emma, and I'll speak to you soon.
Thanks, Lee. You're doing a great job. Bye.
So that's it. Massive thanks again to Emma for being so honest and frank, and just so insightful, and just some journey, but what a lovely lady. Thanks for listening or watching. Make sure you follow the podcast over the next coming months, because there are some more extraordinary individuals, human beings, just like Emma, that just fascinating stuff. Make sure you listen on iTunes, Spotify. Just put My Way Thinker podcast. If you want to go on Instagram and give us a like, it's My What Podcast. And if you want to email me or ask me a question, or you think you know a good guest, then it's My What Podcast at AOL.com. Thanks so much for listening. It means the world. Until next time, God bless. Take care.